Hello and welcome to this Intelligent Briefing. I'm Jess Phillips, Director of Strategic Content at Linchpin Media. In this edition of our Deep Dive series, I'm speaking with Perry Hutton, VP for Africa at Fortinet. We're talking today about some of the key challenges that CISOs are facing as we move into 2021, and we're exploring some of the key priorities they should be tackling in the new year. Good morning, thank you for joining me today.
Hello, Jess.
Thank you for being here. My first question to you today: can we take a look back on 2020 then? What would you say are the key cybersecurity learnings that we can take from this year, particularly in your region?
Well, I'm pretty certain you're waiting for me to respond to something along the lines of the new normal. And I'm not going to disappoint. I think that we'd be fooling ourselves if we were to say that our key learnings in 2020 did not come out of the COVID pandemic. I think this is a global phenomenon for everyone, and everyone's learned from it. For us, the pandemic caused remote working to shift from being the exception to the norm in many workplaces in Africa and around the world. But we need to understand and accept that working from home comes with massively increased cybersecurity risks, such as malware infection, unauthorized access, and obviously insecure devices. Hackers and online scammers are taking advantage of these risks, and cybercrime's accelerating at the same sort of proportions as COVID was at its peak. And in response to these cybersecurity threats, enterprises, governments, and any other organizations for that matter, in this situation have had to take steps to address the gaps in digital trust and security. We've also seen that inclusion, accessibility, and digital divide, we've seen them as issues, which will be heightened in a post-COVID scenario. And this is due to the fact that the negative impacts of the pandemic will fall heavily on the vulnerable populations. So in the new COVID normal world, there's going to be pressing reasons to accelerate connectivity and digital skills for some 3 to 4 million people who remain totally offline, and many of these are right here in Africa. So there's also a more urgent need for universal service strategies and policies to combat new forms of the digital divide, and that means the need for improved affordability of the ubiquitous broadband for all citizens and residents, and this will only grow in the post pandemic scenario.
Thank you. It's a really interesting perspective. With all that in mind then, what are the top 2 or 3 key priorities that you think CIOs or CISOs should be tackling as we head into 2021?
Well, I think in 2020, many CISOs were caught off guard by the pandemic. And off guard is possibly a harsh word, as many had contingencies in place, such as offsite and cloud backup, DR, business continuity procedures, and these sort of things, just as we're all required to have in place for catastrophic events, which we typically think of like tsunamis or earthquakes. But no one ever saw a pandemic of this magnitude coming. And as a result, when the hard lockdown was instituted, many organizations were found wanting. Suddenly having to put all sorts of makeshift alternatives in place in order for them to function. Many didn't do this, many were unable to do this, and many are still not functioning as a result. So regardless of when businesses get the all clear to return to the office, many are now asking the question, do we need to go back to the office? And there's a good chance that many businesses will maintain a hybrid working model for quite some time, and ongoing for that matter. Some may never return to a traditional office model. And I've seen reports that indicate that up to 30% of organizations expect half of their workforce to continue working remotely after the pandemic. Now, CISOs must be ready for what this means for their overall security posture long term, and how to continue to protect their customers or their business or their employees, whatever the case may be. Adaptability is a big key in this regard. Almost all of the IT professionals who we speak to believe that the risk of data breach is far higher for remote workers, and we don't disagree. And this means that CISOs need to ensure that they have automated protection, detection, and response capabilities incorporated into their toolkits to address the risks associated with this new operating paradigm. They'll need to be more concerned with visibility and control within their infrastructures, and this includes endpoints, mitigating insider threats, and ensuring secure access to applications and data, regardless of where it is, be it on-prem or in the cloud. And we also need to consider that SD-WAN starts to play a big part in this, because it goes beyond being a branch-like solution. It's almost as if SD-WAN is the solution, particularly for individuals with high levels of access to data and networks, like IT administrators and C-suite executives. We think that organizations need to adopt a zero trust approach to network access, so that they can see and control all devices and users across their entire network. And with this proactive protection, they can ensure that their networks are secure from the most latest and the fiercest attacks around at the moment. And then, in addition, to address the influx of network logs and events that go with all of this technology, they need to leverage artificial intelligence-based security operations, to include event correlation with SIEM, and automate orchestration and response with SOAR capabilities. And I think that's it in a nutshell.
Brilliant, thank you. I was going to ask you this a little bit later, but you've just touched on the very difficult workplace that CISOs are trying to secure today in this new normal. How much of a challenge is it, and how should they approach the modern workplace given the likely ongoing split between people that are in the office and are at home? What's the best practice?
Well, I think before the pandemic, some organizations had already begun to adjust their security strategies to enable a shift to remote work for different reasons, of course. And while they may not have foreseen this current crisis, their understanding of the need for an effective business continuity plan, together with the inevitable changes being brought about by digital innovation, this led them to rethink what networks and a digital workforce will look like in the 21st century, if you want to put it that way. I think most importantly, this included bolstering the network edge, something which has faced increased and continues to face increased risk ever since the prioritization of mobility, Internet of Things, and of course more recently 5G. And of course, for these organizations with a little bit of or with a lot of foresight, the foundation was already in place for them to meet the challenges of the distributed workforce, the challenges we face today. But for those that didn't, it's taken a large-scale event like this to realize that the nature of work has already been fundamentally redefined, and that the great shift is happening now, not later. And while this transition, obviously massive risks, I don't think these risks should be seen as a roadblock. They should I'm hoping, I believe that they should inspire CISOs to have a new vision for cybersecurity, and certainly we see it accelerating. The pivot into this new paradigm. The shift is absolutely essential, and I think that by failing to seize the moment, organizations could really negatively affect their cybersecurity posture, and along with that, their ability to compete in the digital market space, even without realizing it.
Sure. Another area that we hear a lot about is the increasing convergence of IT and OT networks. How important is the security of OT networks, and how can CISOs factor this into their overall security strategy?
Well, there's two ways of answering this question. The first one is purely from a Fortinet point of view, and the only reason I'm answering it like this is really to emphasize how important we see the of OT and its convergence with IT, and in our Fortinet strategy at the moment, and certainly this is not new. This is probably 18 months old, and will continue into the foreseeable future. We've seen 4 core pillars of business, and the 4 core pillars of business we're chasing will be the obvious ones to you: securing the data center, SD-WAN, cloud, and believe it or not, OT. It's one of our 4 key pillars to our business moving forward. So that's how seriously we see it. We also see it as a massive business. But if we refer probably to what you really meant by the question, the security of OT networks is a growing concern as it involves the world's largest, well, not just the largest, the world's factories, utilities, healthcare, public transportation companies, energy facilities, and even more, all of which have seen massive transformation over the last couple of years. These solutions are designed to make these OT systems more agile, but obviously along with this efficiency comes a very sharp rise in cyber risk. So these systems were typically or previously what we call air-gapped, and this meaning that there was a physical barrier or a gap, if you want to call it that, between the OT systems and the typical IT systems. So they were largely proprietary, and they were completely segregated from the IT environment, and that's what made them safe, or at least until Stuxnet arrived in 2010, and we know what the consequences of that were. And ever since that, OT networks have increasingly been under massive attack, and the attacks are, they're not limited to one form of attack. They've become very generic across the OT platforms. We see large-scale malware, phishing, ransomware, denial of service attacks, and obviously insider breaches, which is the norm these days. We've seen OT-based cyber attacks target national electricity grids, darkening the homes of hundreds of thousands. We've seen targeted attacks against public waterworks, and so on. So it's not something that can be ignored. It's an absolute it's of absolute paramount importance that it's taken seriously and it's looked after properly. The OT environment is an attractive target for criminals, and it's sort of generally accepted that if one hasn't been attacked yet, it will be. It's not if, it's when. So we use many artificial intelligence and playbook technologies used in other IT environments to provide an effective security stack in the OT space. But we also use some more proprietary and specific technologies such as artificial intelligence, deception, and these all allow us to take care of issues in the OT environment, like providing early post-breach detection, reducing dwell time of a network breach, reducing false positives. It's highly scalable in those kind of networks, which is paramount. And then, of course, one of the most important things is it's fully automated. And of course, it wouldn't be the same after the COVID pandemic, because obviously as many of those OT type workers have started to work remotely, again that attack surface has just increased exponentially as well, and of course there's added challenges now in securing the remote user in that OT environment.
Absolutely. And we know that digital transformation efforts haven't stopped. If anything, they've accelerated to help businesses survive and thrive in the new normal. How would you suggest that organisations can make sure that security is really at the heart of their digital transformation strategy?
Well, I think that the 2020 pandemic year has certainly forced many organisations that had a digital transformation strategy to do some level of rethinking. And for those that didn't have a strategy or had a strategy on the back burner, they've been forced to bring that strategy to the fore and urgently consider their plan going forward. We've definitely seen a major increase in efforts to fast track digital transformation plans as a result of the pandemic. Digital transformation is basically a rethinking of how an organization uses technology, people, and processes to fundamentally change the business performance. And technology is at the core here, more specifically computing. And as we already discussed, security's now become the not negotiable in the equation. And as fast as we're trying to build systems or companies are trying to build systems to facilitate the digital transformation, the criminal element is devising methods to infiltrate that technology. And this forces security right to the top of the priority list, and hence the term we at Fortinet adopted, SX or security transformation. And the expansion of most organizations' networks to a borderless network as a result of the large-scale remote access into all of these networks has created massive exposure to rogue elements that, although they were always there, they were partially obscured by the networks as they were in their previous form with more defined boundaries. As part of the security transformation, we need to see networks segmented as part of a zero trust network admission strategy. We mentioned that before. And this is to limit the resources that can be impacted in the case of a breach. Some element of cloud strategy needs to be there to ensure continuity and rapid recovery. And data inside the networks needs to be encrypted so that it can't be used or exposed by cyber criminals. I think considering the recent adoption of digital transformation initiatives that unintentionally expand the attack surface, coupled with the growing threat landscape, it won't surprise you to know that the majority of the CISOs we talk to say that they anticipate an ongoing increase of cyber attacks. Surprise, surprise. And of course, malware and phishing remain at the top of that list. We see that many CISOs are primarily concerned about the known threats, and lack the ability to take a proactive approach to finding and remediating zero-day unknown attacks. And then I think probably finally we as part of our security transformation, we suggest a series of actionable steps that CISOs can implement throughout their teams to ensure that they allocate spending in the right areas and manage their teams for maximum outcomes. And briefly, those are to automate resources, to take a detection and response approach, to enable a holistic approach, and surprise, increase security funding.
Another challenge that CISOs are facing is effectively communicating the risks and the threats that are out there to the wider C-suite. What advice for them in doing this effectively?
Well, I'm not a CISO and I never have been one, but I understand the challenges. My first suggestion to them is always, and to the C-suite is always, ignore the data at your own peril. And quite simply, no organizational function can reside in its own silo and succeed today. And we see this in organizations where you've got the network engineering guys, the operations guys, and the CISO, reporting to different C-suite executives. The network engineering and operations guys report to the CIO, and the CISO reports to the CEO or the board of directors or other executives. And significant synergies and opportunities between the leaders and the departments they lead need to exist. Specifically network infrastructure and operations departments, cybersecurity, they are inextricably intertwined. And it becomes very difficult, when you've got this non-existent marriage between multiple C-suite executives. And I always say that if they ignore this marriage, they do so at the peril of their organization and of themselves. I think the CISOs need to be well versed. They need to be current, proactive, and probably most importantly, never shy in sharing bad news.
Good advice. Looking ahead then to next year, are there any technology trends that you expect to see in 2021 that regional CISOs and organizations should be factoring into their cybersecurity strategies?
Well, I think going into 2021 and beyond, we face another significant shift with the rise of new intelligent edges. And this is about more than just end users and devices remotely connecting to the network. At Fortinet, we have FortiGuard Labs, which is our team of engineers that works on the threats, devises the signatures, and works on the artificial intelligence. The real clever people, and they annually put together a set of predictions going forward. And for 2021, they've estimated the strategies that we anticipate cyber criminals will leverage in the coming year and beyond. And it includes, but is not limited to, predictions and insights on intelligent edge computing, 5G-enabled devices, and advances in computing power, as well as the new wave of advanced threats that will undoubtedly arise as a result. Each year at this time, we take a look at the trends across the cyber threat landscape, whether locally or further abroad. And predicting security threats may sound like more of an art than a science. but the reality is that it's combining a strong understanding of how these threats develop and what sort of technologies cyber criminals gravitate towards. And this, together with evolving business trends and strategies, helps our teams make these predictions, with a reasonable likelihood. I think some organizations are waking up because this new cyber threat world is real. It's not going anywhere. And they've adopted a new mantra that acknowledges that cyber preparation needs to focus not on the if, but rather the when. And there will be a target at some stage. So their resources need to not only be focused on proactive defense, but also on effective incident response. We spoke about that in the first question, and that's because they understand that a breach is inevitable. It's going to happen, and protecting the network depends on knowing what to do next to stop the attack in its tracks. You're going to hear lots about artificial intelligence. It's becoming the norm in dealing with cyber threats. And we absolutely believe that an effective and integrated next generation artificial intelligence system provides the very best chance of defending networks and allowing them to respond to attacks before they achieve their objectives. And then I think just lastly, organizations can't be expected to do this all on their own. They need to subscribe to threat intelligence feeds, blogs, belong to relevant consortiums, and like many of the vendors do, proactively share data and strategies with others in their region or industry. They also need to work with vendors who have established close partnerships with public sector institutions, and these include law enforcement, education, and the likes of.
So really looking at it quite collaboratively.
Well, I think that's critically important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. It's really great to chat to you today.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you.